Mushibugyo begins in an alternate Edo period, where giant insects suddenly appear and attack the citizens. To deal with the threat from the insect monsters, the shogunate gathered warriors from all over the land and put them into the city patrol, which was under the control of the insect magistrate, or Mushibugyo. It was those warriors tasked with fighting the giant insects, and one of the warriors summoned to Edo is the father of the main character of this anime, Tsukishima Jinbei. Jinbei was forced to take his father's place because his father could no longer walk, let alone fight. Jinbei was a fairly reliable samurai and enthusiastic throughout his trip to Edo. He couldn't wait to meet the strong fighters gathered there. However, when he arrived in Edo, Jinbei got lost. Luckily, there was a girl who was kind enough to help him. The girl, Oharu, takes him to her family's restaurant and feeds him there. Besides that, she also took him for a walk after eating his food. While they were walking around, she asked him about his purpose in coming to Edo, which he explained shortly. But just as they were deep in conversation, they suddenly heard someone screaming. Jinbei immediately checked the source of the screams because he worried someone was in danger. Sure enough, the scream came from a man who was about to be eaten by a giant spider. Without a second thought, he tried to help the man, but the spider could easily blow the man away. However, Jinbei could still stand and even prepared to chase after the spider that had run away. But before he could run, someone stopped him. It turned out that that person was Matsunohara Katori, the commander of the city patrol, as well as the person who invited Jinbei's father to come to Edo. Hearing this, Jinbei then introduced himself to Matsu before explaining why his father couldn't come. So, a few years ago, when Jinbei was a child, he and his father were in charge of guarding the child of their master. But on the way, they were attacked by a giant spider, making their master's son wet. Jinbei's father did manage to exterminate the bug. However, his master's son was embarrassed that his pants were wet. Then he blamed Jinbei for crying in fear in front of the bug instead of helping him. Therefore, he wanted Jinbei to be punished for his negligence. Jinbei's father didn't want to see his son punished for something that wasn't his fault. So, he offered to take Jinbei's place and cut off one of his legs. It made him feel sorry for his father. Since then, he was determined to become a strong samurai like his father so that his father could be proud to have a son like him. Moments later, Jinbei and Matsu's conversation was interrupted after they heard that the giant spider kidnapped Oharu and brought her to an old building that had been made into a nest, with many human skins inside that the spider had eaten. Luckily, just before the spider was about to eat Oharu, Jinbei came to stop it. Turns out that the giant spider is not alone. Its colony is also in the lair, and they are now surrounding him, ready to attack him. What's worse is that his sword was hit by a cobweb that was so sticky. Fortunately, at this critical moment, Matsu came with 3 members of the city patrol. They are Hibachi, a female ninja, Shungiku, a criminal, and Tenma, the youngest member who can summon 2 Shikigami familiars and paper dolls. They then slaughtered the spiders, not realizing that there was one spider left after Oharu. However, Jinbei managed to defeat the spider after remembering his father's words, who once said that he must overcome his fear so that the people he protects do not feel afraid. Matsu saw how Jinbei acted to kill the spider, and he was amazed at his potential. But it's still not over because next, Jinbei is faced with a spider queen whose size is much larger than the spiders he fought before. He felt so exhausted, so it was difficult for him to move. Luckily, a man came to his rescue, and with just one attack, he could kill the spider queen. That man was Mugai, the strongest warrior in the city patrol. After all the spiders were exterminated, Oharu immediately ran to Jinbei and hugged him. She thanked him for saving her when she was already ready to die. Turned out that her parents were also killed by the giant spider long ago. Jinbei thanked Mugai for saving him. He vowed to become stronger like Mugai, and one day he would return the favor. Matsu was sure that Jinbei could become a strong member of the insect magistrate office one day. So, Matsu invites him to come with them to their office, indicating that he has been accepted as a team member. The next day, Jinbei, who was more motivated after being officially accepted as a member, began to train hard before attending a meeting of the members of the insect magistrate office. And in that meeting, he finally got further explanations about their organization and the giant insects they were dealing with. So, according to Matsu, the giant insects appeared about a century ago, but until now, no one knows where they came from, and even though they had been around for a long time, the shogunate only founded the city patrol 10 years ago and put the insect magistrate or Mushibugyo at the head of the organization. Strangely though, the insect magistrates never showed themselves in front of other people. Again, their conversation was cut short after receiving reports of insect attacks at several points in the city. Hearing that, Matsu then ordered all his members to scatter to various points, except for Jinbei, which of course made him offended. But Matsu has reasons why he doesn't allow Jinbei to join the fight. That was because, in the past year, none of the new members could last more than 10 days. Because of that, he wanted Jinbei to wait until the next month before he was allowed to use his sword in practice. In other words, he felt Jinbei was still too weak to join the fight. He didn't want Jinbei to die because if that happened, he would have to find new members again, wasting more time. Even so, Jinbei was still allowed to participate by pairing up with Hibachi. That was on the condition that he would not join the fight. He could only watch Hibachi fight and learn from her. On the way, Jinbei tells Hibachi that he already idolizes Mugai and wants to be strong like him. Therefore, he wanted to find out more about Mugai. Incidentally, Hibachi also idolized Mugai, and she knew a lot about him. Based on the rumors she heard, Mugai had joined a group called Insect Hunters. But for some reason, he left the group and joined the city patrol. She not only told Jinbei about Mugai's past but also about how she met Mugai the first time. A long time ago, Hibachi lived in a village with her grandfather, a clan leader. It wasn't an ordinary village but a village famous for its ability to use explosives. When she was little, ninjas were considered old-fashioned, even by the villagers, who preferred to be ordinary farmers rather than ninjas. They even tried to persuade her grandfather to abandon his ninja way, arguing that no one needed ninjas anymore. Even so, Hibachi continued to train with her grandfather to become a ninja until Matsu came to the village to recruit her into the city patrol. She feels Matsu's offer is too good to turn down, thinking it's an opportunity for her to show the world how great ninja skills are. If she succeeds, people will definitely be interested in learning about it. Thus, after getting permission from her grandfather, Hibachi left to go to Edo. But on the way there, she is attacked by flying insects, and this is when she meets Mugai for the first time. He saved her from the insect. Realizing that she is still weak, she is determined to become stronger so that she can repay him. As soon as Hibachi finished telling the story, she and Jinbei saw many corpses lying in front of them. It turned out that they were killed by a giant insect called the demon dragonfly. She ordered him to protect the two survivors from the dragonfly attack while she would fight the monster alone. However, the explosives thrown by Hidachi had no effect on the dragonfly. Instead, it attacks her, causing her to fall into the river. Unfortunately, her bomb was now wet, making it impossible to detonate. Luckily, before the dragonfly again attacked the helpless Hidachi, someone suddenly came to hold its attack. She thought it was Mugai, but her guess ended up being wrong. It turned out to be Jinbei. But instead of thanking him, Hidachi asked Jinbei to back off and let her chase the dragonfly. She persisted in defeating the monster alone because she wanted Mugai to praise her. But of course, Jinbei refused to follow that stupid order. He tried to convince her that it would be easier for them to defeat the dragonfly if they worked together. And besides, there was no room for proving strength in their line of work. Their only job is to kill the insects. Hearing Jinbei's words, Hibachi finally agreed to cooperate with him, allowing them to trounce the demon dragonfly. The next day, Jinbei was asked to patrol the city with Shungiku, but it didn't take him long to realize that the people of Edo and the police didn't like Shungiku, whom they saw as criminals. When Jinbei and Shungiku passed the house that had just been robbed, the policemen looked at Shungiku suspiciously, as if they had found the culprit. However, their suspicions were not without cause because the walls were neatly cut with swords, and they know Shungiku is good at doing that. After finishing their night patrol, Jinbei and Shungiku separated. Jinbei went to Oharu's restaurant, and Shungiku went to drink at the bar. But moments later, while Jinbei was chewing his food, he heard the news of another robbery in the city. He rushed over there, and to his surprise, he saw the policemen surrounding Shungiku, holding a bloodstained sword in his hand, and not far from him, a corpse was seen leaning against the wall. Jinbei was sure that Shungiku wasn't the killer. He tried to convince the police. However, because Shungiku never denied that he was the culprit, the police still caught him and took him to jail. Failing to convince the police, Jinbei immediately went to the office, asking Matsu for help to free Shungiku. But he knew it wouldn't be easy because Shungiku didn't want to tell them why he was at the crime scene. Hearing that, Jinbei decided to go straight to jail to free Shungiku. Much to his surprise, he was touched by Jinbei's determination to prove that he was innocent. Shungiku then asked Jinbei to give him the saw he was carrying, and then he swung it to cut the wooden bars. After getting out of jail, they planned to find the real culprit to clear Shungiku from all charges against him. The scene then switches to Matsu going to the insect magistrate to report Shungiku's escape, but he calmed the magistrate down, saying that Shungiku was his responsibility. He even took the initiative to tell the magistrate of Shungiku's past. It turns out that Shungiku is the son of Sanosuke, the leader of the most feared gang of thieves, and he also often participates when Sanosuke commits crimes. But unlike his cruel father, Shungiku realized his actions were wrong, especially after his mother asked him to change. Afterward, he mustered up his courage to confront Sanosuke and inform him that he wanted to stop stealing and killing. But of course, Sanosuke was furious to hear his wish. One day, Shungiku found her mother seriously injured, and in front of her, Sanosuke was seen holding a sword. Seeing that scene, Shungaku raged. He forgot his promise to his mother and went back to killing. He even took the lives of 99 people, making him called the Killer of 99. Elsewhere, Mugai is seen being visited by a woman named Mitsuki, his former colleague, who was still in the Insects Hunters group. The group is not based in Edo, but they come there because they have a mission to kill several giant grasshoppers, also known as sword locusts. Mitsuki deliberately stopped by to meet him because she missed him and asked why he had betrayed the Insects Hunters in the past. However, Mugai didn't tell her the reason. Back to Jinbei and Shungiku, now they have been surrounded by the police. Just as a policeman was about to attack Shungiku, a giant grasshopper suddenly appeared and killed the policeman. As if on reflex, Jinbei immediately tried to attack the grasshopper, but his sword broke. Shungiku knew there wasn't much Jinbei could do with a broken sword like that, so he asked Jinbei to help the police evacuate the citizens while he fought the grasshopper. But at this time, the police still won't let Shungiku go. As soon as he focused on fighting the grasshopper, one of the policemen stole the opportunity to attack him from behind. Fortunately, Jinbei acted quickly to protect Shungiku when the police launched a follow-up attack. His behavior certainly baffles the police, who still don't understand why Jinbei would want to protect a killer like Shungiku. They even took the time to explain to him about Shungiku's past, even though the giant grasshopper was still nearby. Soon after he saw his mother killed, Shungiku went on a rampage killing many people, including the police. He would even kill his own father if Matsu didn't come to stop him. Matsu told him that it was not his father who killed his mother but the Insects Hunters, the group Mugai used to belong to. After knowing that, he slaughtered the policeman and almost killed his father. That's why the police said he doesn't deserve Jinbei's protection. But Jinbei didn't care about that. To him, it was the past, and the present Shungiku was different from his past self. The giant grasshopper strikes again shortly after, but Shungiku quickly blocks its attack. And apparently, there were 2 locusts, so he and Jinbei had to fight each of the monsters while the policemen watched them with their mouths open. After fighting that giant grasshopper, they managed to defeat it thanks to the power of friendship. But to their surprise, they found many gold coins from the locusts' bodies that had been cut off. It turned out that they were the perpetrators of the theft all along. The truth why Shungiku was at the crime scene was because of a misunderstanding. At that time, Shungiku had just come out of the bar drunk and accidentally stepped on a dog's tail. Enraged, the dog chased him to the crime scene, where he finally found the stabbed sword. He reflexively took the sword, intending to use it to scare the dog away. He did not know that it was the sword of the victim who was killed by the grasshoppers. After the incident, Jinbei and Shungiku grew closer. Jinbei even considered him to be his sword master. A few days later, a giant insect again attacked the city. But instead of focusing on fighting the bugs, Hibachi and Shungiku were busy arguing to determine which of them would eradicate the bugs. While arguing, Tenma knocked the bug out with his giant paper puppet technique before Jinbei followed up by killing the bug. The residents who saw Tenma's prowess immediately praised him, as did his teammates. But for some reason, he paid no heed to their praise. He even ignores his teammates. At night, when Tenma was alone in his room, he screamed in terror after seeing a centipede enter the room. His scream was heard by Jinbei, who then rushed in to check the situation. Here, he felt he could no longer hide his phobia, especially since Jinbei had seen how messy his room was. He finally confessed to Jinbei that he was afraid of crawling insects like centipedes, and he has had this phobia since he was very young. After hearing the shocking confession, Jinbei said that Tenma's phobia could affect his work. He should have told the others about his phobia a long time ago, but he had his own reasons why he couldn't do that. He was afraid that others would use his phobia to prank him. Moreover, he wants to make his parents proud of his current job. He can't leave city patrol just because his teammates teased him. Jinbei couldn't hide his admiration for hearing Tenma's story. He promises to keep his phobia a secret from others and even intends to help Tenma to overcome his phobia. But unbeknownst to them, Hibachi and Shungiku overheard their conversation. The next day, Jinbei started trying to fulfill his promise to help Tenma. And sure enough, he was very afraid of crawling insects. He shuddered in fear when Jinbei showed him a small caterpillar. Tenma was even more scared after Hibachi and Shungiku bullied him. They gave him a package that they claimed contained a snack when it contained many centipedes. Tenma couldn't help but think that Jinbei had leaked his secret to Hibachi and Shungiku. Because of that, he took his anger out on Jinbei before leaving. That made Jinbei furious. He yells at Hibachi and Shungiku and then tells them that Tenma works as a city patrol to make his parents happy. He was different from them, who acted childishly by bullying him. Being yelled at like that, they felt guilty for their childish actions. Meanwhile, a sad Tenma sits in front of a temple, where he meets a child who saw his fight with the monster yesterday. The boy gave him a picture of Tenma's 2 paper dolls, Matsukichi and Tamekichi, as a thank you gift. His spirits recovered after seeing that picture and how the boy admired it. Jinbei also saw all that happened, and he was happy with it. But moments later, he heard from Oharu about the appearance of a giant bug in another part of the city. Soon after that, he told Tenma about the news, and they went to the scene. While Tenma and Jinbei were on their way, Hibachi and Shungiku were already on the scene and engaged in a battle with the monster, which turned out to be a giant centipede. Inevitably, Tenma became frightened when he saw it. Realizing that it would be difficult for him to fight the giant centipede, his friends told him to stay put. But he still tries to help. He knows he can't let his phobia haunt him forever. Although, he ended up just getting in the way of the fight. However, Tenma still didn't want to give up. He was reminded of the boy who admired him, and he didn't want to disappoint the boy by being a burden in this fight. So, he ventured closer to the giant centipede, hoping to deliver a fatal blow from close range. Seeing Tenma's recklessness, Jinbei then tried to give him instructions, but Tenma, still angry with him, didn't want to listen to him, instead calling him a traitor. Hearing the word traitor, Shungiku and Hibachi finally remembered that they still owed him an apology. Thus, they apologized to him for eavesdropping on his conversation with Jinbei and bullying him. A few moments later, the residents came to cheer on Tenma, including the boy. Their support lifted his spirits, and then he used his full strength to blow away the giant centipede, giving Jinbei and the others a chance to chop it into small pieces. Later that night, Matsu called Jinbei to give him a mission to eradicate insects at the minister's house named Mizuno. But this time, Jinbei will pair up with Mugai, and more specifically, Mugai wanted to partner with him, making him very happy. He even went straight to Mugai the next day and thanked him for choosing him to be his partner. But for some reason, Mugai didn't respond to his words. Regardless, Jinbei and Mugai went to the minister's residence named Mizuno. Shortly afterward, Mizuno led them to a room. To Jinbei's horror, the room was filled with insect victims. Mugai could sense the presence of an insect in another room, so he rushed over there. Sure enough, they found a giant larva eating someone. Jinbei, who wanted to gain recognition from Mugai, immediately attacked the larva, and luckily, he managed to defeat it. But apparently, the insect is not alone. Seconds later, a flock of larvae appeared and was about to attack Jinbei, forcing Mugai to intervene. And they were nothing to him, who could defeat them all with just one slash. However, their fight still wasn't over because then, insects that were bigger in size appeared. And to make matters worse, they also appeared in the kitchen, trapping a servant who happened to be there. With Jinbei gone, Mugai has to fight the bugs alone. But it wasn't a problem for him. He can trounce many insects on his own. However, Minister Mizuno was worried about Jinbei because it turned out that the bug he was dealing with was the queen of the bugs. Therefore, he asked Mugai to help Jinbei because he was afraid that Jinbei would be in trouble if he faced the queen alone. But Mugai refuses, claiming that he doesn't care about Jinbei. He didn't need a partner, after all. And besides, his job was only to exterminate all the insects, not to save someone who wouldn't listen to his orders. Mizuno's worries proved correct. Jinbei had difficulty defeating the insect queen even though he had attacked her many times. The situation is getting worse for him because the insect queen tries to attack Yasuke. As a result, Jinbei was hit by the queen's attack after he tried to protect Yasuke. But he still didn't give up. He had promised to protect Yasuke no matter what, even if he had to endure the stabs of the queen's tentacles. Fortunately, Mugai finally decided to check things out in the kitchen. And even better, he chose to save Jinbei after apologizing to Mugai for disobeying his orders. The insect queen was too strong for Jinbei, but it was no match for Mugai. With just a few attacks, he managed to defeat the monster. Unbeknownst to them, Mitsuki was watching their fight from a distance, and she felt that Mugai was still as great as ever. After completing their mission, Jinbei and Mugai left Minister Mizuno's residence. Then, on the way home, Jinbei asked Mugai why he chose him as his partner today. On the other hand, Mugai wouldn't tell him why, saying he had forgotten. The truth is, he asked Matsu directly to pair him with Jinbei last night. He did feel that Jinbei was the weakest among the city patrol members, and he didn't expect much from him. But still, he wanted to know his potential. And after seeing firsthand Jinbei's action today, Mugai seems quite satisfied. Above all, Jinbei was willing to go to great lengths to save others, even if it put his life in danger. Unfortunately, Jinbei and Mugai didn't notice that someone in a mask was secretly watching them as they walked home. The masked man continued to follow them all the way to the city patrol headquarters, as it turned out that he wanted to steal some files from there. But when he was sneaking into the base, he saw Jinbei and Hibachi arguing about their idol, Mugai. Their argument escalated until Hibachi kicked Jinbei, and in the process, she accidentally hit the masked man, knocking him to the ground. They couldn't help but feel suspicious of the masked man, so they brought him in front of Matsu for interrogation. The masked man, whose name was Nagato Mimaru, claimed that he only wanted to learn about the insects from documents at their base. He was curious about the origin of the insects because out of all the books he had read, none of them had ever explained it. Knowing that Nagato Mimaru had no ill intentions, Jinbei asked Matsu to let him know about their archives. But of course, Matsu forbids it because a stranger is not allowed to enter the archive room. Even so, Nagato Mimaru persisted, to the point that Hibachi was annoyed and pulled off his mask. Seeing the face behind the mask, Matsu said that he seemed to have seen Nagato Mimaru somewhere. He just couldn't remember where and when. In the end, Matsu decided not to punish Nagato Mimaru and instead told Jinbei to take him home. But while they were on their way, they came across a giant mosquito, which immediately tried to attack Nagato Mimaru. Luckily, Jinbei was able to repel the mosquito attack. He even used his left hand as a shield to protect Nagato Mimaru. Seeing how Jinbei protected him even though they had just met, Nagato Mimaru was touched. This is the first time he has met someone sincere and willing to sacrifice for him. He was even more moved after Jinbei asked him to help fight the insect with his knowledge. The scene switches to a flashback of Nagato Mimaru's past. Nagato Mimaru seemed to be a noble since he lived in a palace. Despite that, the people around him always looked down on him. It was different when they were in front of him, where they always praised him. In other words, they are two-faced jerks. Because of that, Nagato Mimaru eventually grew up to be a man who found it difficult to trust others. He prefers to read books rather than interact with humans because, for him, books will never lie like humans. Well, he seems to have forgotten that even books are written by humans. Anyway, Nagato Mimaru's thoughts changed slightly after seeing how pure-hearted Jinbei trusted him and was even willing to protect him, and so he decided to help Jinbei. Before returning, he went to fetch something with a smoking basket he had made from hay and tubers. According to him, the smoke can slow the movement of the giant mosquito. Incidentally, by this time, Hibachi and the others had heard about the appearance of the giant mosquito. But when they arrived at the location, they found Jinbei and Nagato Mimaru had defeated the insect. To celebrate their success, Jinbei and the others took Nagato Mimaru back to their base to drink together. Moments later, they were all asleep from drunkenness, except for Nagato Mimaru. He lay in the middle of the room, vowing that he would return to Jinbei someday to share his knowledge of insects with him. On the other hand, when he was about to go home, he found that the archive room was not far from where he was now. So, he decided to enter the room, where he accidentally discovered a secret scroll while searching for documents regarding the history of the city patrol. The scroll turned out to contain a map of the land of the rising sun, in which parts of the map were crossed by black ink. While thinking about the cross's meaning, Matsu suddenly entered the room. He now remembers the true identity of Nagato Mimaru, who turns out to be Tokugawa Ieshige, the eldest son of the shogun. Seeing Nagato Mimaru clutching the mysterious map, Matsu immediately cut the map with his sword before offering him a deal. He promised not to reveal Nagato Mimaru's true identity to anyone. In exchange, Nagato Mimaru had to promise he would not tell anyone about the map. Nagato Mimaru agreed to the deal, but he was still curious about the map's cross. After he asked Matsu, he still didn't get the answer. Matsu refuses to tell him, arguing that not everyone has the right to know the map's secret, even the shogun's son. Nagato Mimaru obeys that rule, but he still asked Matsu not to forbid him from seeing Jinbei. Unexpectedly, Matsu agreed to his request. Fast forward, summer has finally arrived. At this time, the members of the city patrol plan to attend a celebration of the opening of the Ryogoku River in the city. But just as they reached the city center, a giant beetle emerged from the ground in the forest before moving towards the city, where it then created a sand tsunami that endangered the residents. Fortunately, Tenma could dispel the sand tsunami with his two paper dolls. Hibachi and Shungiku also helped him in destroying the large rocks carried by the sand tsunami. Only Jinbei didn't come with them because apparently, they forgot to invite him along. But they didn't have time to pick up Jinbei. Now they must quickly evacuate residents to a safe place. They really don't need to fight the giant beetle because it has been determined beforehand that it will be Mugai who will fight. Indeed, the giant beetle only appears every summer, and every time it does, Mugai is tasked with fighting it. The locals are used to his fight against the beetle and consider it a must-see event every summer. Needless to say, he can beat the giant beetle. He cut off the creature's horn and then absorbed the horn's power with his spear, making the spear grow to be enormous. Then using it, he cut the beetle's body in two. While Mugai is battling the giant beetle, Jinbei, who is left at the base, meets a mysterious girl. She claims she wants to see the celebratory fireworks, but the problem is that she is not allowed to leave the place. Feeling sorry for her, Jinbei then prepared things so that she could still enjoy the fireworks from the city patrol headquarters. As night fell, the fireworks display finally started. While all the townspeople seemed to be gathering on the bridge, Jinbei and the mysterious girl were enjoying the view of the fireworks from the top of the lookout tower. She was happy to be able to enjoy the fireworks, then she gave him a gift in the form of a bell. But strangely, she suddenly disappeared when the fireworks celebration ended, leaving it confused him alone. He didn't know that the girl was his superior, Kuroageha, the insect magistrate. The next day in a forest, Mitsuki seems to be scolded by her group mate, Gekatsu, who thinks she is incompetent in carrying out her task of spying on the insect magistrate. She only managed to get information that the insect magistrate would meditate somewhere after the summer celebrations, but she didn't know where the exact location was. In fact, no one knows about it. However, Gekatsu didn't care about that. He still thinks Mitsuki has failed in carrying out her mission and is not happy about it. If only she could find the location of the magistrate, they could complete the mission they are currently on, which is to kill the insect magistrate. Even so, he gave Mitsuki a chance to seek new information. A few days later, City Patrol was so busy dealing with the giant insects appearing more and more in the city that they exhausted Jinbei. Even Matsu noticed the tired look on his face, so he told Jinbei to go home and rest. When she saw Jinbei walking alone, Mitsuki got the idea to use him to get information about the insect magistrate. She pretended to be a lost girl to get his attention, and apparently, her tactics worked. He immediately took her around town when she asked him to help her find someone. But moments later, when they crossed a bridge, Mitsuki saw Mugai walking toward them from the opposite direction. Fearing that Mugai would break her disguise, she dropped the merchant's eel into the river before ordering Jinbei to catch them. Mugai had seen Mitsuki walking with Jinbei and seemed to know what she was up to. He only commented that she chose the wrong person. She would not get any information from Jinbei. She ignored Mugai's words because she was sure she could rely on Jinbei for information. Unfortunately, her plan ended up failing miserably after they met Oharu. Jinbei was more interested in chatting with her than helping Mitsuki. The next day, Mitsuki decides she will kidnap Oharu and use her as a bargaining chip. Then, after successfully kidnapping Oharu, she came to Jinbei and ordered him to meet her at a certain place. In addition, he had to come alone if he wanted Oharu to survive. Once Jinbei arrived at the location, Mitsuki didn't waste time asking him about the whereabouts of the insect magistrate, but he replied that he didn't know where the magistrate was now, let alone met his boss. Hearing Jinbei's honesty, Mitsuki then dropped him into a sand pit, which turned out to be the place where she kept Oharu. Mitsuki had realized that Mugai was right. She couldn't rely on Jinbei for information. So, she decided to just kill Jinbei and Oharu. But she couldn't do that herself, so she called the bugs with her flute. Indeed, she could control insects. In fact, the giant insects that had recently attacked the city were the ones she controlled. As the insects appeared in the hole, the ground and the ceiling shook, causing Oharu to fall. But luckily, Jinbei managed to catch her before she hit the ground. On the other hand, the bugs tried to kill them by dropping the ruins of the building on the ceiling of the hole, but he instead used the ruins as a foothold to get out of the hole. Jinbei tried to persuade Mitsuki to stop her actions. He believes she is a good person and is forced to do all this by someone threatening her. She became fed up hearing his stupidity, so she called all the insects in the city to that place. But by doing so, she also made the members of the city patrol come to the hole. Before this, Hibachi, Tenma, and Shungiku were fighting the bugs in the city, and they became curious when they saw the bugs suddenly leaving. They decided to follow the bugs, and when they found Jinbei and Oharu in the hole, they immediately saved the two by slaughtering the bugs. But by the time they had wiped out all the bugs, Mitsuki had run away. She went to Mugai and admitted that she had chosen the wrong person. The next day on a beach, members of the insects hunters were seen slaughtering 3 insect magistrate guards. They had finally heard the news that Kurowageha the magistrate was on an island called Hachijo, and now they were going to get there by boat. However, before they left, one of them asked Ikatsu what they would do to Mitsuki, who had failed her mission, and he replied that he would kill her after they successfully completed their mission. News of the insects hunters targeting Kurowageha finally reached the city patrol, who, together with the Shrines Patrol and Samurai House Patrol, rushed to the Edo Wharf to go to Hachijo Island. But just as they were about to set sail, a giant bug appeared in the city, putting the city patrol in a dilemma. They had to choose between rescuing the residents or rushing off to help Kurowageha. Shirasaki, the leader of the Shrines Patrol, tends to abandon the citizens because it is more important for him to save Kurowageha. That decision, however, was unacceptable to Jinbei. Fortunately, Ogami, the leader of the Samurai Patrol, volunteered to protect the city. He and his men then got off the ship and ran back to the city, thus leaving only the city patrol and Shrines Patrol to carry out the rescue mission. Sometime later, their ship was about to reach Hachijo Island when they found a member of the insects hunters waiting for them. That man, Monako, was quite the great one. He easily destroys the super-large ship, forcing Mugai to fight with him. But while they were engaged in a fierce fight, Shungiku interrupted them before asking Mugai to let him fight Monako. He does have a personal grudge against the insects hunters, who are said to have killed his mother. And so, while they were fighting, Shungiku asked Monako about the insect hunters' involvement in her mother's murder. But he claims he doesn't understand what Shungiku is talking about. Monako then surrounded the ship's wreckage with fire to block them from getting to the island, but the fire still couldn't stop Hibachi and Jinbei from flying there by parachute. After that, Monako resumed his fight with Shungiku. But moments later, Shirasaki helps Shungiku by firing the ship's cannon at Monako, leaving him hanging helplessly. Seeing this opportunity, Shungiku slashes him. However, he didn't want to change the nickname Killer 99 by killing a coward like Monako. With Monako's death, the group could resume their journey to the island. The scene then turned to Kurowageha, who had noticed Mushigari's presence on the island. Because she can produce deadly poison, she then tries to stop them by emitting poison smoke that surrounds the temple where she is. Unfortunately, Mushigari had already predicted that. They had already prepared an antidote, allowing them to pass through the smoke-filled area. Meanwhile, Hibachi and Jinbei were already on the island, but they were spotted by Mushigari, who fired at their parachutes, sending them falling. Jinbei himself landed at the shrine where Kurowageha was. As soon as he saw Kurowageha, Jinbei remembered she was the girl he had watched fireworks with, but he didn't think that she was the insect magistrate. Instead, he thought she was the magistrate's servant, because in his mind, the insect magistrate must be a big and strong person and very disciplined like a Buddhist priest. On the other hand, Kurowageha didn't tell Jinbei that she was, in fact, the magistrate. She also paid little heed to his warnings about Mushigari's approach to where she was, thinking that no one could get past the poison fumes she had created. On the other hand, Hibachi, who had just landed in the forest, had to deal with one of the Mushigari members, Mashiro. However, Hibachi was powerless against her. Returning to Jinbei, he was currently conversing with Kurowageha and asking about what an insect magistrate looked like. But moments later, their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Mushigari leader. As soon as he saw her, he immediately attacked Kurowageha, but she could block his attack with her poison. Seeing Kurowageha threatened, Jinbei reacted quickly by helping her, but she and the group leader flew into the air and fought there. Of course, Jinbei couldn't let her, who he thought was a servant, be ganged up like that. Because of that, he climbed onto the roof to protect her, unaware that Kurowageha had intentionally flown onto the roof so he wouldn't be involved in the fight. And their opponents paid no heed to Jinbei. Their target is only one, the magistrate. To stay away from Jinbei, Kurowageha decided to go back into the room, but he followed her wherever she went. The scene then shows Matsu, Tenma, and Shungiku, who have arrived on the island. But then, they were confronted by a member of the Mushigari, Kurogane Maru. Here, Tenma decides that he will fight him, allowing Shungiku and Matsu to keep going. Moments later, Shungiku accidentally arrives at the scene of the fight between Mugai and Gekatsu, and he heard when Gekatsu referred to Mugai as the former leader of Mushigari. Thinking that Mugai had a role in the murder of his mother, Shungiku attacks him, not realizing that it only allows Gekatsu to escape. Mugai chose to drop his sword because he didn't want to fight Shungiku. Seeing that, he finally believes Mugai is not his mother's killer. Still, he wanted to know who killed her, so he asked Mugai about it. However, Mugai didn't answer, arguing that this wasn't the right time to discuss it. At the shrine, Mushigari finally gets fed up with Jinbei always trying to get in their way. Thus, they attacked him until he finally collapsed in front of Kurowageha after being hit by the explosion. Seeing Jinbei hurt, Kurowageha became angry. Deep down, she had been trying to get rid of her human side, especially after she realized that people made her a magistrate because they feared her or just wanted to take advantage of her poison abilities. But he was different. He always tried to protect her, making her feel the warmth of humans again. That was why it's natural that she is angry. She couldn't let Mushigari off the hook after hurting Jinbei. After covering Jinbei with a cloth that could withstand her poison, Kurowageha unleashed her true power, which was so powerful that it caused a huge explosion. The explosion also made the members of Mushigari, who were facing the city patrol, become curious. They decided to abandon their opponents to check the explosion's source. Kurowageha's transformation causes her poison to form butterfly wings, which she then uses to attack her opponents. Now, their weapons didn't even work on her at all. Their weapons immediately melted as soon as they hit her. Her defenses can only be penetrated after Gekatsu and his teammate, Kaina, fire a special weapon that seals her powers. After being hit by that attack, Kurowageha returned to her original form in a visibly weakened condition. She couldn't do anything when the Mushigari leader strangled her, and she could only watch as they intended to kill Jinbei to make her suffer. Thankfully, Mugai came at the right time. He blocked the gang leader's sword just before it slashed at Jinbei. But still, because Mugai is alone, he couldn't fight against his opponents while protecting Jinbei and Kurowageha at the same time. Suddenly, when one of the Mushigari was about to attack them, Tenma came to their rescue using his 2 paper puppets and then took them away. Realizing that their target had escaped their grasp, Gekatsu and several of his companions tried to chase after Kurowageha, but Shungiku blocked them. He is still trying to find out who killed her mother. Hearing Shungiku mother's name, Gekatsu tells his two friends to go after Kurowageha while he fights Shungiku. And after they left, Gekatsu confessed that he was the one who killed Shungiku's mother. Finally, Shungiku managed to find the killer he had been looking for. So, without another word, he lunged at Gekatsu and killed him. Now he is no longer the 99 killer because Gekatsu has become the 100th person he has killed. Meanwhile, Kurowageha and the others were still trying to escape. Unfortunately, on the way, they are attacked by their pursuers, resulting in Matsu being separated from them. But when all hope seemed lost, Jinbei suddenly transformed, and, at the same time, his strength increased greatly, allowing him to kill the pursuer with ease. His death was felt by the leader of Mushigari, who immediately ordered his remaining men to help the others capture Kurowageha, while he will continue the duel against Mugai. But before that, the leader wanted to know why Mugai betrayed them, even though all the Mushigari members trusted him very much. And here, it was revealed that the leader was Mugai's older brother. Returning to Jinbei, his transformation seemed to make him unable to distinguish between friend and foe anymore. He tried to kill Shungiku, Hibachi, and Tenma, but a moment later, he tortured 3 members of the Mushigari. When Jinbei went on a rampage, one of the Mushigari members tried to use the opportunity to kill Kurowageha. But just as he was choking her, her bell accidentally fell, and the tinkling of it somehow brought Jinbei back to his normal state. He then saves her and kills the Mushigari member, and because his energy was drained, Jinbei immediately fainted right after. The leader of Mushigari saw it all happening. However, instead of killing Kurowageha, he ordered all his men to back down, arguing that they could kill her when she was weak. After her opponents left, Kurowageha checked Jinbei's condition, and she found a strand of her hair in his mouth. According to her guess, the hair made him able to transform. But regardless, her rescue mission on Hachijo Island ended in success. With that, they then returned to Edo. Meanwhile, in Edo, the insects that attack the city injure many members of the Samurai House Patrol, forcing Ogami to fight alone against the insects while his men are hospitalized. At the shogun's palace, Nagato Mimaru's father and the 6th shogun, Tokugawa Yoshimune, realized that these insects' massive attack could signify a great war against the powers of the West imminent. But he was still calm, unlike Nagato Mimaru, who was excited because he wanted to join the fight against the insects. On the other hand, Oharu is again caught, and this time she is held hostage by a giant grasshopper. But when the bug was about to kill her, Jinbei came to her rescue. Not long after, everyone who went to Hachijo Island returned to Edo. Suddenly, there was an explosion after Jinbei saved Oharu. Hearing that, they were curious about what caused the explosion, so they checked over there. To their surprise, they saw that someone had slaughtered all the insects himself, and it turns out that person is Jinbei's father, Genjiro. Later that night, a party was held to celebrate the success of the patrols in rescuing Kurowageha and defending Edo from insect attacks. Genjiro became the guest of honor at the party for his actions in slaughtering the giant insects alone. Jinbei is still curious about what happened to Hachijo Island because he can't remember anything after his transformation. But all of his friends didn't tell him that he was the one who defeated Mushigari thanks to his transformation. Or rather, they couldn't tell him because Matsu forbade them to, because he still wanted to investigate Jinbei's transformation before telling him. After the party was over, Jinbei met Genjiro, who asked him about his progress after staying in Edo for a long time. But Jinbei replied that he was still weak. All this time, he has survived because he is always helped by his friends. Hearing that, Genjiro finally decided to train him so he could become stronger. They started the training the next day by going to the top of Mount Fuji, where Genjiro then taught him one of his sword techniques, the Fuji hammer. The technique required the user to swing the sword at the ground as if using a hammer. It's a powerful technique if done right, as evident from how Genjiro can make the ground he hit shatter with just one swing. Since Fuji is an active mountain, lava flows out as soon as Genjiro destroys the ground. He did that on purpose so that Jinbei could stop the volcanic eruption using the same technique, where he had to hit a large rock at a different point. If Jinbei failed, the volcanic eruption would wipe out the entire city and endanger the lives of the citizens. The problem is that Jinbei only has 3 days to master the Fuji hammer technique and stop the eruption since Matsu only gave him that time. Still, Jinbei believes he can do it in such a short amount of time, even though Genjiro says it took him 5 years to master the technique. And so, the practice began. But Jinbei still couldn't master the technique even though he continued to practice for 2 consecutive days without sleep. Exhausted, he ended up falling asleep on the second night. But how surprised he was when he woke up the next day. The lava had expanded to cover a large rock that he would use to stop the eruption. Genjiro, who was still there, said that this was the last chance for Jinbei to stop the eruption. He didn't want to waste that last chance. With great determination, Jinbei slashed at the lava in front of him, splitting it in 2. Afterward, he ran to the center where the boulder was before hitting it with the Fuji hammer technique. Finally, he did it. The lava receded, although it had not completely disappeared. This was when Genjiro finally came into action. He obliterated the rest of the lava with his Hurricane Fuji move, a technique he plans to teach Jinbei next. Still, since Jinbei's 3-day vacation was up, they decided to postpone it and return to Edo. The scene then moves to Osaka, a city in Kansai, west of Edo. Giant insects were seen there, and even a giant cocoon seemed to cover the top of Osaka Old Castle. It turns out that there is also a half-insect human, Yukimura Sanada, a new antagonist who intends to attack Edo. He sent one of his 10 cross insects, Sasuke, to initiate the attack. Sasuke's stature is very similar to that of a human, making people not suspect him when he walks through the city streets of Edo. He then asked one of the passersby about the location of the city patrol office, but the man he asked was apparently drunk, making him unable to answer properly. Angered, Sasuke then ate him. Meanwhile, Jinbei and Genjiro, now near Edo, decided to eat first before returning to the city. But while they were having a nice meal, they saw a man carrying a wounded old man walking towards them. The man revealed that he had just passed several villages destroyed with their inhabitants killed. The old man was the only survivor he found. The old man then wakes up and says that his village was attacked by an insect that looks like a human. The human insect, however, was no longer in his village. He saw for himself the creature flying towards the city. At the same time, Matsu and Shirosaki had heard of the massacre in the city. They then went to the scene, and much to their horror, they saw Sasuke devouring the citizens. Seeing their arrival, Sasuke asked them about the whereabouts of the young samurai, which, of course, meant Jinbei. They refused to answer, and so he decided to kill them. Needless to say, he failed to kill them, because just as he was about to attack them, Ogami suddenly came and blocked his attack. The 3 chiefs then divide the task. Matsu is asked to take away a girl who is still alive, while Shirosaki and Ogami will fight Sasuke with their men. However, they couldn't injure him in the slightest, even when they attacked him simultaneously. At this point, Shirosaki took out the 5 cannons he had just finished constructing. He was sure the cannons he was proud of could kill Sasuke. But the cannons turned out to be completely useless. They could only destroy his mask, revealing his face resembling a fly. Angry that his mask was destroyed, Sasuke defeated all his opponents and even managed to stab Shirosaki. But when he was about to finish him off, Jinbei came to stop him. Now that he has found the person he was looking for, Sasuke fights Jinbei, intending to kill him. After a moment of exchanging attacks, he managed to cut Sasuke in half, much to Shirosaki and Ogami's astonishment. But moments later, they were shocked to see that Sasuke wasn't dead. In fact, he could duplicate himself from the pieces of his body that had been cut in half. He can do that because it turns out he is a ninja fly. Thus, Jinbei was forced to fight him again. But every time he cut Sasuke's body, it only allowed Sasuke to multiply his body. The arrival of Hibachi, Shungiku, and Tenma didn't help much either. They only made him multiply his body more. But eventually, Hibachi realized that some of Sasuke's bodies didn't come back to life because their heads had been crushed, indicating that Sasuke's weakness lay in his head. Realizing this, Jinbei got an idea to defeat Sasuke. He then asked his friends to help him lure all of Sasuke towards him. Then, after they gathered around Jinbei, he immediately used the Fuji hammer technique to destroy all the flies. But a few moments later, Matsu came back to the scene and found that there was one Sasuke's head that was still not crushed. A few days later, in Kishu province, insects were seen attacking a village there. It turned out that the attack was caused by 5 members of the 10 copy insects on orders from Sanada. News of the attack on the village finally reached Yoshimune, who immediately called a meeting with his ministers and Kurowageha. The ministers panicked at the meeting, forcing Yoshimune to calm them down. He said they need not be afraid because Edo still has Kurowageha, the insect magistrate. Yoshimune already knew that Kurowageha's power had disappeared. However, he was forced to lie to raise the morale of the officials. As they talked after the meeting, they suddenly heard a commotion outside the room. It turned out that the commotion came from Nagato Mimaru, who wanted to attend the meeting. He insisted even though it was forbidden because he wanted to convey the meeting results to Jinbei. Hearing Nagato Mimaru mention Jinbei's name, Kurowageha immediately asked Yoshimune to allow her to meet Nagato Mimaru. The two of them then talked in Nagato Mimaru's room. At first, they talked more about Jinbei and how a son of the shogun like Nagato Mimaru could befriend an ordinary samurai like Jinbei. But then, Kurowageha suddenly asked Nagato Mimaru to show her where Yoshimune hid his treasure. She wanted to know the legend about the giant insect, and she guessed that Yoshimune had a document about it in his treasure room. Nagato Mimaru agreed to take her there. He showed her a map she had seen in the city patrol headquarters archive room. It's not a real map but a mock map he made based on memory. Even so, the mock map is similar to the original, complete with the cross on the left. Nagato Mimaru noticed that the cross was covering the western part of Japan, and right next to the cross was Kishu Province, which was said to be the strongest defense area against insects. Later that night, Yoshimune received a report that the head of Sasuke that Matsu found had been stolen by someone. Sure enough, the scene later showed someone carrying Sasuke's head. It turned out that that person was one of the 10 cross insects, Saizu. He stole Sasuke's head not to save him but to kill him. He considered Sasuke useless, and because of that, he had to die. After killing Sasuke, Saizu rushed to Kishu to meet Sanada, who was waiting for him there. Back in Edo, Kurowageha asked Yoshimune for permission to go to Kishu to restore her powers. Yoshimune was surprised at the sudden request. He wondered how Kurowageha could know that there was something that could restore her power in Kishu. However, in the end, he allows her to leave, provided she is guarded by his confidant, Oka, who is said to be the smartest swordsman in Edo. Kurowageha agreed to Yoshimune's terms. She even asked him to allow her to bring in one extra bodyguard, Jinbei. And so, Kurowageha, Oka, and Jinbei's journey to Kishu Province began the next day. Unbeknownst to them, Sanada and his men had arrived at Kishu. However, he pacifies the local feudal lord, Tokugawa Munenao, claiming that he did not come to fight or create chaos but to meet Munenao. It turned out that he wanted Munenao to provide him with a large warship that could accommodate thousands of people and match the shogun's ships. He even had a plan for the ship. Munenao only needed to build a ship based on that design. Munenao could not help but comply with his demands, but he puts one condition on Sanada, that Sanada and his men may not harm any of the people of Kishu. Meanwhile, Jinbei got a lot of lessons on how to be a good bodyguard from Oka during their journey so far. When Jinbei helps 2 local residents in trouble, Oka still thinks his actions are wrong. Because Jinbei made many mistakes, Oka felt he was not suitable as a bodyguard. If he made a mistake again, Oka wouldn't hesitate to send him back to Edo. After they had traveled for a while, they arrived at the border gate of Kishu Province. But unfortunately, the 2 gatekeepers didn't let them in on Munenao's orders. Munenao knew that Kurowageha was heading towards his territory. So, he instructed all the gatekeepers to forbid anyone from entering Kishu because he didn't want Kurowageha to meet Sanada, who was still in Kishu. However, the entry ban made Oka suspect something was happening in Kishu, and he wanted to know what it was. Thus, the 3 of them continued on to Kishu via another path, which was a steep cliff. Sometime later, they finally arrived at the second gate. Unfortunately, Kurowageha accidentally stepped on a branch, making the guards there notice their presence. Jinbei then cut down some trees to give them time to hide, but Oka realized that they couldn't pass through the gate now. Because of that, they finally decided to wait until the night before they slipped through the gate. When the night comes, one of the 10 cross insects, Jinpachi, kills all the gatekeepers for letting Kurowageha and the others escape. Jinbei was angry to see Jinpachi's heinous actions and almost attacked him, but Oka asked him not to let his emotions affect his current task, which was to protect Kurowageha. So, according to Oka, the best thing they could do now was to stay hidden from Jinpachi. In the end, Jinpachi managed to find them, forcing Jinbei to fight him. He realized Jinpachi was stronger than Sasuke, and it was only after fighting with all his might that he managed to defeat him. After that, Jinbei and the others entered the city beyond the gate, unaware that Jinpachi was still not dead. He then reported the appearance of Jinbei and Kurowageha to Sanada, who immediately threatened Munenao to arrest them. If he failed to do so, Sanada would kill everyone in Kishu without a trace. Not wanting that to happen, Munenao distributed leaflets regarding the 3 intruders who had entered the city the next day. He gave the townspeople 10 days to catch them. Otherwise, Kishu would be destroyed. To sow fear in the residents, Sanada then shows 2 mountains of corpses and destroys them. It was as if he wanted to say that the residents would suffer the same fate if they failed to carry out his orders. The scene then shows a little girl observing the chaos in Kishu from a distance. The girl, Aurori, was an acquaintance of Hibachi, and she felt she should report what happened in Kishu to her. She sent a message to Edo using a flying squirrel, but unfortunately, she was caught by one of the cross insects shortly after sending the letter. Meanwhile, Jinbei's group found out that their posters have spread throughout Kishu. Oka said that with the spread of these posters, all the people in Kishu had become their enemies. But he guessed that Munenao still hadn't divulged to the enemy about their identity or purpose in coming to Kishu. Therefore, they had to stick to their original plan to restore Kurowageha's power. Shortly after, the group found an old woman who looked injured. Jinbei intends to help her even though Oka forbids him. Sure enough, she immediately tried to kill Jinbei as soon as she found the opportunity. She failed to kill Jinbei, but as a result of the commotion she caused, the villagers flocked to the scene. Knowing that the people wanted to catch him, Jinbei then ran to avoid their pursuit before hiding in an alley in the village. But it turned out that a boy in the alley immediately stabbed him. As if it couldn't get any worse, a group of bandits appeared, and they also wanted to capture Jinbei. They were so eager to catch him and get the prize money they could have hit the bald boy with their horses if it weren't for Kurowageha saving him. Seeing Kurowageha, the bandits turned their sights on her, but Oka stopped them. With just one slash of his sword, he cut off the bandits' arms, causing them to flee. After the bandits fled, the villagers immediately surrounded them, but Oka decided not to fight them. He dropped his sword and surrendered to them. The scene then switches in Edo, where Matsu is seen ordering Mugai to Kishu. Hearing this, Hibachi became curious about what was going on in Kishu, especially since she knew Jinbei was there now. Not long after, she got her answer after receiving the letter the flying squirrel had sent. In the end, Hibachi, Shungiku, and Tenma went with Mugai to Kishu. Returning to Jinbei's group, it turned out that the villagers did not catch them. Instead, they invited the three to a party, expressing gratitude for expelling the bandits who often terrorized the village. For the same reason, the villagers realized that they weren't bad people. Soon afterward, the party is interrupted by the arrival of two crucifix insects, Mochizuki and Uno, who claim they came to help the villagers catch the three intruders. However, because the villagers ignored them and hid in the houses, they then showed Arori and threatened to kill her if the villagers didn't come out. Suddenly, Jinbei came out. He then slashed at Uno, releasing Arori from his grip. Unfortunately, the two bug men overwhelmed Jinbei with their combined attacks. Seeing Jinbei's defeat, Oka comes out of hiding and then humiliates him, saying that he should be ashamed of his current condition because he was already determined to defeat the insect-human duo, but he failed. Hearing that, Jinbei immediately got back up and threw Uno. Not long after, a 2-on-2 duel ensued. Oka fought Mochizuki, while Jinbei faced Uno. The result of the duel ended with Jinbei and Oka winning. The villagers welcomed their victory happily. All of them and Arori thanked Jinbei and Oka. Elsewhere, Munenao is seen approaching a well. Whatever the well was, it seemed to be keeping a secret because he said he would not let the bug men know about the well. The next day, Jinbei and Kurowageha visit a shrine, where they meet Hibachi and Arori. It turned out that Hibachi was there because she wanted to spy on a local noble named Yamagatake to get the latest information on Kishu. But when they finally decided to enter the shrine, they found Yamagatake talking to Oka. Here, Oka wants to ask the nobles for help so they can sneak into Munenao's castle, to which Yamagatake agrees. The next day, the city patrol members who had arrived at Kishu began to carry out their plan. Hibachi and Arori are assigned to pave the way to the castle. Shungiku and Tenma explore the city for information. Mugai and Yamagatake are looking for additional people willing to help them. Meanwhile, Jinbei, Kurowageha, and Oka remained in hiding, considering the posters of their faces had been scattered all over Kishu. The three will only be in action tomorrow when the real fight begins. The plan was that they would divide themselves into 3 groups tomorrow. The first group, codenamed Snow, consisted of Kurowageha, Mugai, Yamagatake, and his men. The second group, coded for the Moon, consisted of Arori and the villagers that Jinbei had rescued. While Jinbei, Shungiku, Hibachi, and Tenma joined the last group, codenamed Flowers. On the same day, the ship built for Sanada was finally completed, and that was good news for Munenao, who thought Sanada and his gang would be out of town as soon as he handed the ship over to them. However, that hope did not come true. When Munenao showed Sanada the ship in the evening, he refused to leave. Instead, he planned to celebrate the ship's completion first. Munenao was not happy to hear that because their agreement stated that Sanada and his group would leave Kishu immediately when the ship was finished. However, he argued that Munenao was the first to break the promise. He failed to catch the 3 intruders despite the 10-day deadline. The truth is Sanada still intends to fulfill his promise. He would immediately leave Kishu after killing all the citizens. He ordered his men to kill the workers who had built the ship. The next day, Sanada gathered all the citizens of Kishu in the center of the city. Then, he took out several giant insects, intending to use them to kill all the citizens there. But, as usual, Jinbei and company came to save the residents. Oka, who came with the flower group, challenged Sanada to a fight, whether an all-out or one-on-one battle. But his challenge was rejected by Sanada, who felt he would have won easily because he had more people. Seeing Sanada about to leave, Jinbei immediately provoked him, calling him a coward who could only run for fear of losing to the city patrol. Jinbei's provocation succeeded in angering him. He accepts the challenge to a duel on the condition that Jinbei and the others must first defeat the remaining 10 cross insects. Only if they succeeded would Sanada fight against them. And so, Jinbei and the others prepared to start fighting. But before that, Oka told them about the duties of each group. Kurowageha and the Snow group are heading towards the old well to restore her powers. Until the Snow group completes their mission, the Moon and Flower group must distract the enemy and buy time even if they must die. After listening to that explanation, the Flower group rushed towards the castle, but Jinbei somehow got separated from the group on the way. At this moment, he is suddenly pulled into the water by Jinpachi, who wants to take revenge for his previous defeat. Jinpachi was sure that this time he could defeat Jinbei because, after all, he was a water insect. Indeed, Jinpachi could give Jinbei a hard time by taking out the tiny insects that attacked him ferociously. However, Jinbei has the Fuji hammer technique. Using this technique, he can get rid of small insects and reduce the water in the pond. Seeing that, Jinpachi immediately changed to another mode, namely his human form. Only his 2 arms were still shaped like insect arms. He can still control the water in his current form, and it's quite troublesome for Jinbei. But still, Jinbei was able to beat him. Now he has mastered the technique of Hurricane Fuji which his father had shown him in the past, and with that technique, he could ride the whirlpool and kill Jinpachi. Meanwhile, the rest of the Flower group is intercepted by another member of the cross insect, Saizu, who turns out to be a ninja from the same village as Hibachi. He is a rival of Hibachi's grandfather. Hibachi then asked the others to keep moving, while she would fight Saizu alone. Apparently, Saizu mastered the illusion technique. Jinbei found them after defeating Jinpachi. He then saw the illusion as if Hibachi had lost to Saizu. Afterward, he thoughtlessly attacked Saizu, unaware that the person he was attacking was actually Hibachi. Fortunately, Hibachi could withstand Jinbei's attack, and the illusion disappeared a moment later. Saizu had really troublesome techniques. In addition to the illusion technique, he mastered mist-teleportation, preventing Hibachi's attack from hitting his body. Hibachi knew that mist-teleportation was a forbidden technique in her village. She guessed that Saizu could master the technique after killing his master and stealing his secret scroll. Unexpectedly, Saizu confirmed all of Hibachi's accusations, transforming into his human form. Here it is finally revealed that all the members of the cross insect, and even Sanada, were ordinary humans before. After the exposition session, Hibachi and Saizu resumed their fight, and Saizu again used his illusion technique which troubled her. Not only her who was hit by his illusion, even Jinbei too. In the end, Hibachi and Jinbei broke the illusion. Thanks to their teamwork, they defeated Saizu. Unfortunately, what they defeated was only his shadow. The real Saizu turned into a black liquid, which then possessed one of Yamagatake's bodyguards escorting Kurowageha. And for some reason, she suddenly said they had almost reached the old well that could restore her powers. Her words made Saizu realize that the person in front of him was none other than the insect magistrate. Knowing the information, he went to Sanada and reported the whereabouts of the insect magistrate. Meanwhile, Jinbei and Hibachi finally entered the castle, where they were reunited with their friends. Soon afterward, they were confronted by 2 members of the cross insect, Seikai and Issa. This time it was Shungiku's turn to shine, so he told the others to go first while he faced Seikai and Issa, who had almost the same abilities as Sasuke. They can regenerate even though Shungiku has dismembered their bodies. But still, despite their transformation into human form, and even though they claimed their strength increased 5 times after their transformation, Shungiku was able to defeat them in the end. He chopped up their bodies at an incredible speed, thus giving them no time to regenerate. After defeating the twins, Shungiku reunites with Jinbei and the others. And so, they continued to move towards the castle's upper floors until finally, the passage in front of them forked into 2. Without waiting for a response from his team, Jinbei immediately dragged Tenma to the right lane while Oka and the rest of the flower group chose another. Maybe Jinbei realized that Tenma still didn't get a chance to shine, so he kept them separate from the group. Anyway, it didn't take long for them to find a cross insect named Anayama. After that, he chose Tenma as his opponent. It turns out that Anayama has been observing Tenma all this time. He knew Tenma had joined the city patrol so he could reunite with his parents, who had been separated from him for a long time. He also knows that Tenma always depended on his friends and 2 paper dolls. That's why he wants to teach Tenma about justice so that Tenma can be stronger. However, his concept of justice is just nonsense. Something about abandoning family and friends to become stronger. Anyway, after getting beaten up and lectures about justice or whatever, Tenma beat Anayama. He combined his 2 paper dolls into one, then used them to send Anayama into space. After defeating his annoying opponent, Tenma dreams of reuniting with his parents, who claim to be proud of him. And when he opened his eyes again, he was already on Jinbei's back. Meanwhile, Kurowageha's group finally arrived at the Old Well, also known as the Well of Eternity, where Munenao had been waiting for them all. Without wasting more time, Saizu reported it to Sanada, who responded with a smile, saying that their king would be pleased to hear that. After that, he ordered Saizu to kill all of Kurowageha's bodyguards. Apparently, Mugai had noticed Saizu's disguise from the start. So, before Saizu could act, he immediately slashed at him. But it was still not enough to kill Saizu. He returned to his original form and then fought against Mugai. At the castle, Hibachi, Oka, and Shungiku arrive at a room filled with illusory snow, where they then encounter two cross insects, Juzo and Yuri. Not long after, Jinbei and Tenma also arrived there. The battle between the two cross insects versus the city patrol began. In the middle of the battle, Oka and Jinbei left the fight to Hibachi and the others while they exited the room by slashing at Saizu's illusion. Afterward, having managed to escape the illusion, Oka asks Jinbei to go find Kurowageha and protect her while he fights against Sanada. Unfortunately, heroism alone is not enough to defeat Sanada. Oka ended up dead at the hands of Sanada after a short fight, in which Oka was completely unable to injure him. Meanwhile, Yamagatake and his men begin to unseal the Well of Eternity as Kurowageha prepares to enter the well to restore her powers. But later, Munena warned her that she could potentially be affected by the evil forces that resided in the well if she entered it. As a test to regain her powers, Kurowageha will be transported to a painful past once she enters the well, and if she failed to pass the test, she would lose her memory. Even so, she was determined to enter the well. She must regain her power to stop the chaos that is ravaging the country. As soon as Yamagatake and his men managed to release the seal of the well, poisonous purple smoke immediately shot out of the well. Munenao and the others could be poisoned if they stayed there and inhaled the smoke, so Kurowageha ordered them to go outside immediately. A few seconds after they left, Jinbei finally arrived, and Kurowageha didn't force him to leave. Instead, she explains to him that the poison-filled well can give the insects that enter its immense power, but if an ordinary human entered it, they would die. She also intended to tell Jinbei about her true identity. However, she was interrupted by Sanada's arrival before she could speak the truth. Sanada told Jinbei that he had killed Oka, which made Jinbei angry. He then attacked Sanada, but the difference in their strength was too great. Sanada can easily ward off his attacks before throwing him. However, after he knocked down Jinbei, Sanada suddenly knelt in front of Kurowageha and called her Princess Na. Then he asked her to come with him to Osaka Castle, where their king was waiting for her. But their conversation was cut short by Jinbei, who apparently still had the strength to fight. He attacked Sanada again, hoping he could give Kurowageha time to enter the well. She did go into the well afterward, but his attack still didn't work on Sanada, and in the end, Jinbei was thrown into the well. Jinbei could somehow see Kurowageha's past when he was in the well. It turns out that long ago, she was the daughter of a noble and was known as Princess Na. One day, she finds a disgusting insect monster and decides to keep it, despite everyone, including her parents, wanting to kill it. But her parents finally relented after she insisted on protecting the disgusting monster. Then a few months later, a war broke out in her kingdom. The war ended in the defeat of her kingdom, and Kurowageha died after the palace was attacked. Miraculously, the disgusting insect monster was able to revive her. The monster even gave her the power of a poisonous insect. Still, Kurowageha didn't realize that she had that power back then. She then went to look for her parents, unaware she was spreading poisonous smoke throughout the palace. In the end, everyone in the palace died, including the invading soldiers and her father and mother. There was actually one survivor besides Kurowageha. It was Sanada, who at that time was a soldier in her kingdom. Just like her, he was also given power by the disgusting insect, allowing him to escape the flames that engulfed the castle. In the present, Kurowageha finally woke up and saw that Jinbei was in the well with her. But after remembering her past, she starts to blame herself for saving the disgusting insect monster, a mistake that ends up bringing disaster to people. Therefore, to avoid past events from repeating themselves, she chose to stay in the well and then push Jinbei back to the surface. After Jinbei returns to the surface, he hears from Sanada that Kurowageha will lose all of her memories once she gets her powers back. In fact, that's exactly what Sanada wanted. If Kurowageha loses her memory, he can persuade her to join forces with his king to eliminate humanity. Well, Jinbei didn't want that to happen, so he took a boulder to use as ballast and then jumped back into the well. Moments later, he caught up with Kurowageha and immediately told her what he had heard from Sanada. The news made her hesitate to stay at the well because she didn't want to forget Jinbei. However, even if Kurowageha returned to the surface, she still didn't know how they could beat Sanada. And in response, Jinbei assures her that he will defeat Sanada with his strength. Seeing Jinbei's confidence was enough to convince her. And so, with that, they returned to the surface. But Jinbei's words were nothing more than false promises. Ultimately, he lost to Sanada, who forced Kurowageha to return to the Well of Eternity to regain her powers. But after she comes out of the well, she turns into a butterfly girl different from the one seen in the past, much to Sanada's surprise. By the way, Mugai managed to kill Saizu and absorbed his insect power into his sword. And interestingly, during his fight against Saizu, The scene switches to Mugai's past and explains why he betrayed Moshigari. It turns out that in the past, Mugai had tried to kill Kurowageha. On one occasion, he even managed to sneak into her place after killing all the guards. However, when he finally came face to face with her, he found her eyes were just like him. Those were the eyes of someone no one had ever loved. Feeling that he had found the same person as him, Mugai then decided to betray Moshigari and defected to the city patrol. In the present, the city patrol was still trying to defeat Juzo and Yuri, and they had even moved the battle location to the center of the city. But in the middle of their fight, Matsu suddenly came out of nowhere and killed the 2 bugmen with 1 slash. And so, with this, all 10 cross insects had been defeated. After that, Matsu and the rest of the city patrol went to the Well of Eternity location, where they later found Sanada still shocked at Kurowageha's change. Even so, after thinking for a moment, Sanada still intended to take her to Asaka Castle. Hearing that, Jinbei immediately stood up and tried to protect Kurowageha. He would not let Sanada take the maid lady away. But to his surprise, Kurowageha stabbed him in the back while smiling evilly because she had already lost her memory. Even though Jinbei had been stabbed with poison, he was still trying to get Kurowageha to remember her true self with the power of friendship, but she still couldn't remember anything. At this point, Sanada was tired of seeing Jinbei always trying to thwart his plans. Because of that, he attacked Jinbei, destroyed the Well of Eternity, absorbed all the poison that came out of the well, and transformed into human form before finally creating giant insects. In a situation like this, Jinbei still didn't give up. He then tried to attack Sanada again, although unfortunately, he fainted after being hit by Sanada's deadly attack. Seeing Jinbei fall, Mugai and the others immediately attacked Sanada. Unfortunately, their attacks didn't work on him because Sanada was able to create a barrier that protected him. Even Mugai's sword, which had absorbed Saizu's power, could not penetrate the barrier. After they all attacked him, Sanada counterattacked them using his giant bugs. Mugai couldn't dodge the giant bugs. However, when the bugs try to kill Mugai, Jinbei comes to save him. He had transformed like when he was on Hachijo Island. It turns out that Jinbei has Moshigari blood from his mother. Moshigari can turn into insect people because they have been cursed by the disgusting bug monster Kurowageha helped. After all, the disgusting bug monster doesn't like it when Moshigari kills its friends, the insects. However, the Moshigari could only transform into insect men if they came into contact with the disgusting insect monster's power. That's why Jinbei, who had accidentally eaten Kurowageha's hair while on Hachijo Island and was also exposed to poison from the smoke in the Well of Eternity, could turn into a bug man. It was because the poisonous smoke and her power both came from the disgusting insect monster. Unlike when he was on Hachijo Island, Jinbei can now control himself even though he has transformed. He could do that by watching his idol, Mugai, fight against Sanada. Because of that, he could control his mind after seeing that. He could restore Kurowageha's memory by holding her hand and hugging her. So, after her memory returns, Kurowageha helps City Patrol fight against Sanada and the giant insects destroying the city. They fought fiercely until finally, Jinbei finished off Sanada by using a new combination of various Mount Fuji techniques. With that, the fight ended. Sanada was dead, and so were the giant bugs that previously filled the city. After peace returned to Kishu, Jinbei and the others returned to Edo by ship. On the way home, Kurowageha tries to tell Jinbei about her true identity, but he cut her off before she could speak. With that, the anime is over, and until the end of the story, Jinbei still didn't know that Kurowageha was his superior, the insect magistrate. The anime ends. The moral lesson from this anime is friendship can overcome all obstacles.